I'm Marlene Ruck Simmonds, and I believe I know everyone on the phone. We just want to thank you for coming to this session this afternoon. And I also want to thank Shirley Hodder, who is also going to be assisting, as well as Calvin Goffer on the phone. We're really pleased to be here this afternoon. And before we get started, or as part of our work this afternoon, I want to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And also, we also want to take time to honor our elders who have come before us, who are with us today, and those who are no longer here with us, for the work that they did on behalf of all of our children, ourselves, in enabling us to be in this place, in this time, doing this work. We have what I think is an exciting and interesting afternoon planned for us together. That's going to be interactive, as you heard Bridget shared, an opportunity to really share with us the things that you're thinking about. But before we jump in, I wanted to give an outline of our outcomes for today. The first outcome is really around honoring you as Black educational staff, as leaders in our province and across the system, for the work that you continue to do on behalf of Black children, but on behalf of all of the children that you serve within our provincial education system. Secondly, it is our hope, as we have heard from various professionals, and we are including professionals, all those who are working within our school system, of building a provincial collaborative professional network to be able to identify and support your interests and the interests of Black staff within the province. And the third part is, we know that as we are building an inclusive education system, and it's not without its barriers, that we are interested in hearing about the barriers that you as professional staff face within our public education system. Those are our outcomes for today. And we are going to sort of flow through the afternoon with the activities, but please keep in mind that if there's things that you want to share with us, to talk about us, this is our time together, and we want it to be useful for you. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Ken Fells around the next slide and the Jamboard activity that we have planned. Ken.
So good afternoon, everybody. It's so good to see so many people. Tracy, man, you've been tripping me out, man. Like, I see that dynamic sign you got there, and I'm wondering how come we all don't have one like it. So you could make $1 million off that. On the other hand, I want to acknowledge my elders, who, without the shoulders to stand on, we would not be here. I also want to acknowledge the Mi'kma'ki and the Maliseet people, the warriors who protected the unceded territory of Nova Scotia and what is New Brunswick. With that said, folks, we have some different quotes for you this time, and we want you to go into the Jamboard favorite quote, pick out a quote. For those who haven't been on before, it's really interesting. There's some different quotes for you. So please indulge yourself. Pick one quote that resonates where you are in this conversation right now. That is the key. My caution to you all is my computer's going to shut down in 12 minutes, so I may not be with you. I can't stop it. So it's doing some installation or something. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware that that's happening in case I disappear. So if we could go to the Jamboard rooms, the Jamboard room, the actual link is in the chat room, and you can help yourself and get started. We're going to give everybody about 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll come back and have a little bit of a discussion on before we get started. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. And it is the first slide that you're going to see in the discussion room. Really interested in finding out what people's chose and why. Who'd be able to get us started in hearing about your choices? Thanks, Madame.
While we try to teach our children about life, our children teach us what life is about.
Thank you. Next one.
I chose, I never dreamed about success, I worked for it.
Why was that important for you, Melina?
There's spoken or unspoken rules I find for people of African descent. Sometimes you can dream about something, but if you don't put in the work and figure out how to push through those boundaries, you'll get stuck. Sometimes I think we need to lend a helping hand, and sometimes we also need to think of how we can help ourselves over those boundaries as well, or through those boundaries.
Thank you. And Madame, can I go back to you as well? Interested why you chose yours, why that spoke to you.
I'm thinking about the recent Black Lives Matter, because really it's our youth who have said enough is enough. Yes. We've been saying it for more than 400 years, but finally it's come to them. And I think I personally, I was so moved by what they had to say, and the fact that there were people who are significant as leaders in education who, when they saw me for the first time, saw me face to face, they did not acknowledge that that even was something that would have affected me, would have impacted me. Yet these same educational leaders made a very big thing about the Portapique issue. And when you're the only person of color on a staff, you would think that people would reach out to something that is significant to that person.
Yes. Thank you, Madame. Other quotes that speak to you as a Black leader?
I had two that actually spoke to me. First, Martin Luther King Jr. one. I actually had that on a bulletin board at Robert Borden. Melina, I don't know if you saw it. They might have painted over it, but I put that on a bulletin board on Robert Borden because I wanted to remind our children to don't get dazzled by the shiny ball, is what I call it. Keep your eyes on the prize in terms of developing your intelligence and being able to see things the way that they are in the world, because they do distract us with things like capitalism. And that's what I call the shiny ball. Right. And they kind of give us, like, if you look at currently the Black Lives Matter movement and the things that they're sort of given, but are you really going to change the system? Are you going to really make some significant changes, as opposed to just giving us little things like putting Black Lives Matter on the back of your helmets and that kind of thing in sports? Are you really going to do some serious systemic change? So I always thought it was important to have that up there so that the kids could see that ultimately that's what we're looking for. For them to be able to see what's going on in the world and be able to look at it critically and not get distracted by those other things. The other one, though, that also resonated with me as I sit here today, seeing so many people that have I've had some professional dealings with and really supported me, was the one from Thurgood Marshall. I didn't get here on my own. You know, people have done things for me along the way that I'm truly grateful for. I'm trying to do the same for those who I work with, to do the same thing, because we don't get here without standing on the shoulders of someone. And I always acknowledge that I never got here without somebody taking a chance on me, without somebody really doing things that they may not even have been supposed to do. Fells, I will absolutely 100% say he did some things for me that he probably didn't know, but people were talking about it in the staff room about what he did for me. But, you know, here I am, and I'm grateful. And I try to do the same for those who I work with as well.
Thank you, Tracy. The risk, what I hear you also talking about is the risk, and not to be caught by what the sort of, it makes me think about the iceberg, not to be caught by what we're seeing above the surface. It's what's below, the shiny. Yes. Other quotes that people selected.
I would have to say, for me, it's the one that says, they fear this.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the high numbers of Black students on IPPs and adaptations, and the fact that barriers are put in front of them that will not allow them to go to higher levels of education. And this is why I appreciate what we are doing right now to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore, that it ends.
Mhm. Thank you, Karen. Another quote. I can jump in with mine. I chose, it always seems impossible until it's done. That the work that we have before us sometimes can seem insurmountable, but it's possible. And then, you know, the challenge to the narrative that this is the way things are, this is who our children are, this is as much as they're going to be able to learn, being able to sort of counter that with, but that's not who they are. So that message stands out for me. Giving somebody another chance just in case before we go to the next thing. Thank you for your reflections and sharing your heart around what's important to you as a Black leader in our system. We wanted to begin the presentation by thanking you for what you have done. I hear Tracy, what she is sharing with us today is that she has arrived here because of what other people have done, how they have thought about her, the things, the place that they made for her, whether or not the risk, it was about a risk. And I think in taking up educational leadership as a Black person, there is always risk. There is always something that we need to give up in order to ensure that the promise is operationalized in the system. And so pausing for a moment to thank you for all that you do, the seen and the unseen for the children, is at the front of this presentation, this session, this time together, because we know the work that you're taking up is not easy. The times when you need to speak up, demonstrate, show, attend meetings, go back, have the conversations, have the difficult conversations, remain silent, speak up when you need to. Those are times when there isn't always somebody in the room to say thank you, but it's important for us to really acknowledge you as leaders and the things that you're honestly doing for the children. When we thought about your work, there was a video that we wanted to make sure that we showed to you, and we showed this earlier in the year to the regional coordinators of African Canadian education because it spoke about the things that they're doing, the things that are happening in the system because people have the will to do it. Aziz Hilliard talked about the will, and that when we have the will to do what is right, it will happen and it will occur. So I'm going to take a moment just to upload the video, and I'll show it to you. I'll also put the link in the chat so that you can see it in the event the video sort of stalls.
was Wisconsin does have a rich cultural and racial diversity. That's just who we are. But how it shows up in education, we can do better. When we come to this frame for Black children, it's this whole conversation around, we feel that there's something that's broken, that we need to fix it, that we have to treat them differently. No?
I'm good at math, reading, social studies, science. I'm really good at drawing and cooking.
Under the conditions that most people are working with in our schools, particularly those schools that are so-called at risk, they're put at risk. They're not at risk because of who's there. They're at risk because of how we treat them.
I actually had advanced classes this year.
And my grades is good. I just checked yesterday.
Children, they all have capital. We all have some unique gifts and talents that are innate to us. How do we tap into their best self?
I go in looking for treasure. I go into a school, I'm going to see all kinds of opportunity, things that are already happening that you haven't even paying attention to, that you can work with right now. And I think we think too much in terms of technical fixes to what really is a cultural problem.
We have 93% attendance, so our students love coming to school. Every morning for announcements, we listen to a song by Nas, I Can. So we stick that in their mindset early on that they can accomplish and be whatever they want to be. It's important that they hear positive affirmations on a regular basis, because once they continue to hear that, they begin to believe it. And once it goes from their head hearing it, it goes to their heart.
When I think about my own teaching and classroom experience, you don't know what you don't know. If I knew that my experiences were different than the children that I'm teaching that are before me, I have some work to do.
All of our teachers, they've had professional development on building relationships with students, making sure they're checking their biases, and having 2 African American males at an elementary school have changed the dynamics and culture of our school.
Parents, families, and the school, they're all partners. So what do you do to finesse that? If you don't know who your students are, you don't know who the families are, then the absence of that relationship is not going to help teachers to be able to have positive learning outcomes.
I think our approach here is one based on love. I know it sounds a little corny, but love. Part of it's learning, part of it's social. You know, kids show up here every day, can connect. Every student wants to feel like they belong. Student-teacher relationship is so important for that to happen, that there shouldn't be any embarrassment with being confused about something or not knowing or just flat out making a mistake.
You want to have a solid relationship and rapport and have a real interest in understanding where students come from, their communities, their families.
For anybody that's in education, you gotta be transparent. You gotta come out of yourself. My job is just to love them, reach them, and teach them.
We saw a need for a school-based mentoring program. We were able to find 2 wonderful gentlemen who want to do that work, and it's made all the difference in the world.
My favorite part is just talking with my brothers, how how we can keep reaching our goals. If we didn't reach our goals all the way, we can just keep trying.
When we get kids sitting in circle, that alone begins to make a difference. Building that mutual support, and it's also a space for them to have some real intellectual engagement that's not just academic, but just like really opening their minds.
When you got that education and you can go and you can start a career, start a family, and do all the things that you want, that's what makes you a man.
Lots of kids kind of feel shy talking about like their emotions. Here you can kind of be free and tell your brothers what's going on.
Can you imagine a child that has no voice? To have just somebody to just sit down and just don't say nothing, just listen to them. Like, I'm just gonna make this all about you. You just tell me what's on your mind, what's going on in your heart, what's going on at home, what's going on at school. How can I help you become great? And they just tell you everything. And just building that relationship with them to know that, hey, anytime something going on, I can go talk to Mr. White.
The teacher is not just an instructor. A teacher, through and culturally responsive pedagogy, is also a mediator. You know, I'm not imposing my own beliefs on you, but I'm making sure that I'm opening up these doors of opportunity for you.
We have 25 students that are in the program. Everyone has improved in their math assessments. The average increase was 8 points in reading and 11 points in math.
Students are going to talk regardless. They want to be heard. They want to feel valued. And so having circles of support here to validate that, to get them to
Just going to stop sharing for a moment, and Ken's going to load his. It's not as sluggish. Thank you.
And so having circles of support here to validate that, to get them to express themselves, to reflect on who they are and how they can grow as people has been tremendous.
I let them share as much as they want to share. And then when I feel like that they don't want to, I don't push them. The main important part here is about trust.
I like coming to the circle because I know that I could talk about anything to the girls in the group. In this circle, I just feel like I can be myself. It's like walking into a home that you can tell anybody anything.
Today we're going to open up a topic for just dedication and what dedication means to you.
Do good in high school.
Do good in high school?
Okay. You know how you have stuff like on the inside that you like have to carry on your back, weighs you down and make you get bad grades and stuff like that? Like you can come in here and tell anything.
Hypothetically, after college, what type of career would you be pursuing?
Being an entrepreneur, you know, basically running my own business. Could be a doctor.
Doctor.
I want to be a surgeon or an OBGYN. I want to be a doctor. I want to be an orthodontist.
They look at this as a sisterhood of the natural circle of support. And what I'm encouraging teachers to do is to build a better relationship, and then there'll be a better understanding of, you know, how they come to school, what they feel, and what is important to them and what is real to them.
Circles started more than 10 years ago, and all Circles did is it created opportunity, created conditions to think out of the box that we usually think of in schools.
That role of facilitator is extremely critical because they're really that point between the students, between the staff, and even advocating like on behalf of the students and the families at times. It's not just hard work, but it's heart work at the same time, trying to connect on that human level. We teach them that you're really just there to facilitate. There's like a collective knowledge and each student brings something to the table, and it requires that you look at yourself. So what we try to do is really uncover and unpack what's really at play.
We're brought in to address a symptom. They discover, okay, these are the gaps in our school culture or the problems in our practice. This is what we really need to work on. Circles is a catalyst for change. It's not a program at all. When you change the peer culture. And when I say change, you draw out of kids what they already know and can already do, but now are motivated to. That's when the magic happens.
We can be successful in life, that we can do it. Like, you gotta show like the little ones that they have to do it to like succeed.
This is what we do to support what our students are capable of and the capital that families bring to the school.
Culturally relevant professional development, getting to know your students, what motivates them.
If you want to be culturally responsive, just talk to people. Talk to them about what they like to do outside of school. Talk to them about the most positive things that they love about their community. Just have that dialogue.
And my teachers helped me get an education. They made me a great person.
Everyone realizing that they are in this together. You experience that from the front office staff to the cafeteria. There's an element of trust that you do have my best interests at heart.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Ken, for showing that, jumping in around that video. Some people may have seen this before, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. We thought it fit with you and the role and the work that you are undertaking in the schools. Interested to hear what people are thinking. How does it speak to you? And feel free to use the chat or your microphone. So Madame writes, we have strengths and excellence. It just needs to be acknowledged and drawn out. Absolutely. Our learners' families are already capable of excellence. Approaches that use the context are valued by our communities and have the best possibilities for continued success. Thank you, Madame.
I think it really reiterates the importance of relationship and that is ongoing work in terms of relationship with our students and with our families and even with our colleagues, because sometimes you can be in a building and as the only Black staff member feel very much alone and isolated. So I think the relationship piece is definitely key for all of us.
Yes, Ms. Williams, I think you're definitely touching on something, because you're right. Sometimes the best relationships are with the families and the children and not necessarily the staff as you're trying to work on behalf of the kids. Thank you for that. Other thoughts?
I find the video highlights the importance of giving student voice and getting students to have their opportunity to speak and share their thoughts and what they're thinking. So I felt that the video highlighted that.
Thank you, Natasha, for offering that. So the importance of voice and the space to create that voice is for voices to be heard.
There's another question in the chat.
Thank you. Thanks, Bridget.
Comment.
Yes, thank you. So Karen writes, we need to continue to work on changing the culture within our schools. Absolutely. Absolutely. The culture, the behaviors. Thank you, Karen. I wanted to introduce you to a concept that Michael Dantley, and he's out of Miami University, and he talks about the qualities that leaders who are trying to, and he's Black men in the U.S. living, that qualities that leaders are sort of, who are looking to create the changes in the system that we're talking about, take on. And he talks about in terms of a critical spirituality. And the critical spirituality is bounded by 3 particular tenets. The first one, he said, for the leaders who are trying to create the changes for the students and the families, that they have this critical insight, the ways in which they engage with the work around racism and equity and justice. And by that he means is that we have an understanding, we have what he calls a profound pessimism, which means we know what the reality in the schools are for our kids. And we choose to enter in to do this work very deliberately, because we also have what he calls this operationalized hope, or he frames it as inescapable opportunism, which means we enter back into the systems, even if we end up being bruised or misunderstood, that we have this hope and this dedicated commitment to changing the system to support our kids. And the last quality that he said that leaders possess was that they have this deep-seated moralism, or this sense of justice around what is right, what should be done, regardless of what the rules are, what the policies are, that they act in ways that create justice and that create equity for learners. Very much in line with what the Black Report said needed to be done. And, you know, that is around monitoring the policies, the practices, as it relates to not just the children, but the educators as well. Further, they talk about eliminating the racial harassment and working consistently to having environments of learning or environments of working that promote wellness and health and strengthen all those who are involved in them. Just going to stop now and hand it back over to Ken as he leads the next couple of slides for us.
So as you can see, we're looking at interrupting the system. So I can't think of a better person than who speaks volumes about how to actually manage those pieces by being there and being the an individual who actually speaks up for youth. Just to look at some of those differentiated items that we need to look at. And so some of those items are withdrawals. If you think about the assessment practices and you look at the disaggregated data and you think about the number of students that don't write, or if you look at disaggregated data as well, and using that different lens and figuring out that a lot of our children don't self-identify. So we know that we have 7,000 plus, but are there more students in that? And we know there are more students in that that are in the system that we can't reach because they're not part of the student support worker program, or the parents for some reason or other, because of blended families, foster care, who are wards of the court. There are so many other issues that we really have to take into consideration when we look at how those assessments are taking place. The high portion of suspensions is amazing to me. When I was at Nelson Wander Elementary School, I think in 5 years we suspended 5 students because we developed a program that was centered around the children. It's always centered around their spirituality and who they were. And, you know, if they was acting up, then you walked them home. That's how you dealt with it. Racism and racial incidents. The improbable piece to this is, are they being recorded effectively? Are they recorded in a way that actually we can address? And people don't know how to record that information, and they record it under insubordination, or if they record it under physical violence, or if they record it under a number of the other codes of conduct. We're not getting the reality of those incidents that have taken place, simply because some people want to create that culture of silence. And I'm not saying they do it deliberately, but what they don't know is ineffectively, they actually cause that culture of silence through the whole system in school, where our staffs know that the administration are not recording it, so they don't say anything. And then our support staff don't say anything. And our student support workers don't get the information. And our RCs don't get the information. And our children realize that, guess what? We're not going to be heard. Our voice is not going to be heard, just like the inclusion document states. Therefore, I'm not going to say anything. So they take the suspension. Role models, supports, differentiate access to courses and programs are a real concern. And that comes down to guidance. But more importantly, it comes down to the principals and then vice principals and other support network people knowing that they have a role to play in supporting all students, so they have access to all the programs that are available. Those folks who are on the call, I don't know if you know that according to the Special Education Act, 7% of all students on IPPs are entitled to be in part of any program that's part of the school system. And that's something that's really important to understand. And if you don't know that as an administrator, and you haven't read that part of the special education document, not MTSS, but the special education document, which still exists, it was never replaced. That's a fact, and it impacts more marginalized students than anybody else. Next slide, please. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to show you a video. And this video, the first time I watched it, I thought right away about Melina Colley-Kennedy. And Tracy Mulder, actually, because they're two special people that I've worked with who are numbers people. So I want you to listen very carefully to this, and then we're going to comment on it in the Jamboard room. So Miss Marlene, if you can stop presenting.
So the year was 1999. I was 13 years old. The location, a sleepover with all of my best girlfriends. The occasion, well, the new Destiny's Child album, The Writings on the Wall, had just come out. And we felt like listening to it for an entire night on repeat was the only way to mark such a glorious occasion. And since that fateful day in 1999, my love for Beyonce has only gotten stronger. And I know I am not the only one. And yes, shout out to the Beehive. And if you don't know who Destiny's Child is, this was the girl group that Beyonce was a part of before she started her solo career. And since then, Beyonce has grown to be one of the best artists of our time. With over 100 million records sold, she's won 20 Grammys. She's become the most nominated woman in Grammy history. She has sold out world tours. She has more statistics and has broken more records than I'm going to use for my entire time today. But Beyonce is a woman at the top of her game, and America has loved her. And on February 6, 2016, Beyonce released a new single, Formation, complete with a music video and a next day Super Bowl halftime performance. Now, most of us are familiar with Beyonce. We've heard her music, we've seen her perform either live or on TV. But this was a different Beyonce. We saw her paying homage to the Black Panthers at the Super Bowl. We saw her standing against police brutality in her Formation video. And this is one of the first times where we didn't see Beyonce singing something like Bootylicious or Single Ladies. And a lot of people didn't like it. The critics came pouring in, and I realized something. America's reaction to Beyonce highlighted a much more subtle, more nuanced issue we have.
Like, there's got a complaint.
But this was a different Beyonce. We saw her paying homage to the Black Panthers at the Super Bowl. We saw her standing against police brutality in her Formation video. And this is one of the first times where we didn't see Beyonce singing something like Bootylicious or Single Ladies, and a lot of people didn't like it. The critics came pouring in, and I realized something. America's reaction to Beyonce highlighted a much more subtle, more nuanced issue we have in our country. See, we like Beyonce when she's singing Bootylicious or Single Ladies because she's sassy, she's sexual, and she is a stereotype of what we want Black women to be. But when she shows a less monolithic character of herself, and ultimately of Black women, we didn't like that as much. And now we're in a space and time in our country where racial tensions are high, people are protesting, people are polarized, and what we see every day on our social media feeds and on the news are people standing on extremes of every side of this issue. But I want to argue that a lot of America's problem with race comes from a smaller, more invisible form. Sometimes, I think when we talk about race, a lot of us can think about slavery or former civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. or Rosa Parks, and it feels like a reality of the distant past that has little to do with how we live our everyday lives today. And I want to disagree, and here's why. So Terrence Roberts, he's one of the Little Rock Nine. They were the first 9 students to integrate the Little Rock school system. Well, he talks about a principle that social psychologist Malcolm Gladwell highlights in his book Outliers, except he frames around race. In the book Outliers, Gladwell talks about something called the 10,000-hour rule. And the 10,000-hour rule is this. If you spend 10,000 hours intentionally practicing something, you become an expert on that thing. But here's the catch. Once you become an expert in something, about 70% of that action gets relegated to your subconscious. You've put in the hours, you've done it enough, and it becomes sort of automatic. For example, if you were to ask gold medal gymnast Simone Biles how she jumps on a 3-inch beam, does a no-handed cartwheel, 4 flips off the back, and lands squarely on her feet, how she does it, she'll only be able to give you about 30% of that answer. Why? She's put in her 10,000 hours, she's become an expert, and when she gets on the beam, her body knows what to do. It becomes automatic. Okay, so what does any of this have to do with race? Well, I want to give you some dates. The first is 1619. 1619. This represents the year that the first Africans were brought to the US as slaves. The second date is 1954. 1954 is the year of Brown versus Board of Education. This is a case that was meant to desegregate our country. Now, for the sake of this example, let's assume that in 1954, our country integrated and everything was great. We know that that's not the truth, but just track with me. So 1619 to 1954. This represents a span of 335 years. Now, for these 335 years, our country intentionally practiced the dehumanization of, the abuse of, the exploitation of, and the segregation from Black people in this country. For those 335 years, Black people were owned as property, were refused citizenship, were treated as less than, were bought and sold as commodity, used for entertainment, and disregarded. Now, if you're wondering how that time breaks down, those 335 years represent 294 10,000-hour units. So our country became an expert 294 times on the dehumanization of, the oppression of, the abuse of, and segregation from Black people in this country. Now remember, once you become an expert in something, 70% of that action gets relegated to your subconscious. So if we look around and we ask ourselves, why are racial tensions still so high? Why are so many parts of our country still so segregated? What is going on? If we trust our automatic responses, we'll only be able to give you about 30% of that answer. Now, assuming that in 1954, when legally some things changed, We've only even been trying to do something different for 62 years. Okay, so back to Beyonce. What does any of this have to do with Beyonce? Well, Beyonce is a black woman in America. A country that has become an expert on expecting certain things from people who look like Beyonce. They have been our entertainers. They have been our commodities. They've been our sassy friends, our eye rollers, our comedic relief. And we don't even realize how deeply comfortable we are with the roles that we have created for one another until someone like Beyonce shows us another side and we don't like it. Our automatic responses tell us, no, she should be singing Bootylicious or Single Ladies. We like that Beyonce. That's the role she should fill. So you may be asking yourself, so then what do we do? How can we move beyond this? Well, renowned poet and author Maya Angelou has a beautiful quote that says this: first, recognize that I'm a black woman, and then forget that I'm a black woman. We will not be able to move past race in this country until we are willing to acknowledge what race has meant and continues to mean for how we interact with one another, what we expect from one another, how we see one another. Please do not fall into the lie that we shouldn't see color. Instead, face head-on the fact that this country's expertise in segregation, oppression, and racism has created subconscious realities of what we want each other to do, where we think we should be, how we think we should talk, live, where we should go. And the only way to move past that is to move through it. We can no longer rely on our automatic responses to tell us how to treat one another. Instead, we need to start intentionally practicing something else and understand that we are working against a 335-year-long deficit. So if we're going to move past it, it's going to have to be intentional. We have to start becoming experts in something different. So to put this all in Beyonce terms, you can no longer have our Bootylicious if you're not willing to understand our formation. Thank you.
All right, how are we doing now? We good?
Great.
All right, so I think one of the caricatures is you have to understand is, I think that the lady who was speaking did a dynamic job of bringing that piece, particularly around the Afrocentric modeling of math. So when you consider in the Canadian concept, there are 200 years of that multiplicity of enslaved people from 1619 until 1834. So the numbers can actually be translated directly to what took place in Nova Scotia and translated through that intergenerational trauma that our folks still go through, especially for the indigenous populations that exist here. When you consider the fact that there are 6 different cultural groups from the continent through the diaspora that are presently here, whether you were part of the planters, the Black Loyalists, Trelawney Maroons, the Black refugees, the Underground Railroad, those folks who immigrated in the 1960s when the border became open to people of color, to those folks who immigrated, and for those Black refugees that came later on. The concept is the same. We just have to recognize that not all Black people who live in Nova Scotia, those Black people of African ancestry, may have a different concept of what their education is about. But irregardless of those points, if you go back to what the speaker was saying, there is that systemic barrier that is always there, that's translatable, but it's infused in the education system. And that's because sometimes people possibly don't know that they don't know, because they don't know the historical background of the intergenerational trauma, the unconscious bias, the microaggressions, even the value system that they bring to the classroom, or the knowledge base of where they are around the province of Nova Scotia, whether you have internet, whether your parents are in a blended family. One person may be incarcerated, mom and dad may be there, but even the wealthiest of our culture still are suffering the same indignities and the same same concepts of microaggressions, the implicit bias that exists. So I wanted to make sure you understood that this is not just an American thing. This is something that transcends through all of North America. And to place it in context, we just have to, look back to the Black Report. The Black Report in 1994 covered all of these points that we're talking about right now. The update to the Black Report, 2009, did the same thing. The Thiessen Report covered the same basis for IPPs in 3 different school boards. The inclusion document, all these documents have documented, whether it was the Upshaw Report, the Black-Frank Report, the Graham Report, the Green Report. We can report about every report, and they all say the same thing about addressing the indifference that has taken place. But now is the time for us to take action on those steps. So I feel comfortable with that. What we need to do now is we need to go on I think we're going to the Jamboard. And then from there, what I'd like you to do in the Jamboard is complementary to the same thing. What resonated with that video? What resonated with you contextually and what we're doing in the system we have now with the systemic barriers that you see with reference to the role modeling, the things we talked about, how the systemic barriers cause so much misunderstanding that we miss it, that our children miss out, particularly the unconscious bias. And if you can give us a couple points on a couple of the notes, and if we color those sticky notes green, it would be appreciated. So if you can make your way there now, we'll do that for about 7 minutes and then we can come back. Does that sound reasonable?
I can let you know. So you're going according to your birthdays. There are going to be slides 2, 3, and 4 that we skipped for now. So you should be on 5, 6, and 7. If your birthday is January to April, you're in group number 1, group number 2, and group number 3. Should be 5, 6, and 7 are the Jamboards that people are on.
Sorry about that. I thought everybody knew.
We skipped 1, 2 to 4. I see people are in on number 5. Now that's fine. If everybody, we're a small group, small enough that we can use the number 5. It seems like everybody's putting their ideas there for now.
Could you put the link in the Jamboard for me once again?
Yes.
I've been booted out 4 times now.
I will.
Okay, folks, if we could come back right now, well, I tell you what, let's get our final ones in. We'll give you another 30, 35 seconds or so. Get your last ones in, and then we'll just take some time to review them and see if anybody wants to provide some feedback while we actually do sort them out. Some people are using some creative stickies there, man. Like, well, how are you doing all that? That's amazing.
I don't know how they do that.
Okay, folks, so let's just do a couple of them before we move on. Change, move through it, become an expert in something other than anti-Black racism. What will be our strength to Black men and boys? Black excellence. Anything new? Am I in the right page?
Yes.
Use your love chat talk.
Mm-hmm.
That's the right page.
Thank you. I like that one. Black individuals are supposed to stay in their lane and not disrupt white sensibility message I'm getting from this video. I can get that. I also want to add something else too, right? And, you know, I hope people don't, you know, misinterpret what I'm saying, but a lot of times we do get our folk on the line, in particular, our folk, and they bring up so many suggestions and they're so helpful. They are. But the action steps are to follow through on that. If you're going to say something, man, you know, be there to take that 10 minutes to explain it or provide an opportunity to use so we can see your expertise and let you shine. We'll raise you up. It ain't about taking credit. It's just being there and being part of the team because we only can bring up the whole community. So with that said, go ahead.
The thing that I noticed about the video is that I love that there was a celebration of women. In our school context, however, who is it that we see primarily on these IPPs? It's not the girls and women, it's the boys. So that's why I said, what will be strength to Black men and boys? Because they have strength, they have purpose, and yet from a very early age, it's almost as though they are singled out as being at a deficit for language arts development. And that internal unconscious bias sets them behind for a long time.
Thank you for that. And I do second what Karen Dumais said. You are right, Gail. I mean, you're absolutely right on point. But we've known that for 20 years, folks. We've known that. Now comes the time where you got the resources and we've got the source information to actually provide the action steps to change those things. And that's particularly at the elementary level where those things are taking place. If they don't have those comprehension skills in grade 3, we know that's when our children are faltering. I know I'm taking too much time, so I'm going to move on now. And I believe it's Augie, you're up, unless anybody else has anything they want to add.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's very
excited and feel privileged to work with the team that we have here at African Canadian Services Branch. And the next couple slides, where I'm just going to briefly go over what we have come up with as an education framework for Black students in Nova Scotia. We've been working on this for over a year, and we constantly have brought what we had thus far out to the public. And we've gotten feedback from our community, from regional coordinators, from student support workers, from our colleagues at EECD, from parents. And so this is another chance for us to share that framework and get feedback for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the framework. We're going to bounce back to a Jamboard. I like Marlene's suggestion around, based on the numbers, we're only going to go to one Jamboard and put all of our comments there. So I will talk about that once we get there. And then we're going to talk after that about equitable access for staff members of African ancestry. And I know that my sister Falami had a group called Working While Black. And partly it was, how do you, as a professional, what about your wellness? What about your going to work, and what space are you in to be able to be energized to help the kids? And the thing is, for us, we're not only helping the Black kids, we're helping the white kids, we're helping all the kids. So we are going to, so there's, in this next section, we'll talk about the framework, and then we will zero in on what this group would what concerns would you have about equitable access within your job. So we have 5 pillars that we came up with as our framework, that's standing on our framework stands on. And we're very proud of this framework because we needed an action plan to go forward. And one of the things that Marlene said to me when I started this job probably almost a year ago to the day was around impact. And one of the visions we talked about was a boxer punching, trying to punch at a bag and just keep missing it, but throwing punches. And so we want to hit the bag. And so one of the things when we came up with this framework is, what ways can we work with the system so that our students actually feel an improvement in their day-to-day education, their relationship with teachers, the curriculum, the fairness of who should be getting educational supports and who should not, accountability. All of these things are built into these structures. So I'll go quickly through them. And I know that there's many people on this session who were with us this morning or yesterday when we went over this framework. And to be honest, you know, it is somewhat repetitive for those people, but the more you know our framework, the better it is, because we want everyone on board with this direction that we're taking. So our first pillar is authentic self-identification. We know as people of African descent that we're not all the same. So it goes from some people that say, oh, I don't see color, which is what we don't want. But then if you do see color, you see all Black people as the same. And we know that there's diversity within diversity. So can you go back a frame, please, Marlene? Thank you. So in the authentic self-identification, which I will, when we move to the next frame, I can explain it a little more, is a big pillar for us around how we see ourselves in the system. Then the next pillar is knowing them as they are known, which is the same way I have 2 boys in the system. I love my 2 boys. And when they go to school, I would like the teachers to know them the same way we know them as home. And again, the next slide will speak to that more. Educational programming and services is our third pillar, and where we really discuss things around what supports are there for our Black students, how do we access those supports, where are we disproportionately and let's say inequitably more prominent. So our IPP situation, we all know, is something that we want to fix. I think the students that need it, yes, but we have a lot of students on that type of programming that don't need it. And so the accountability for that is part of educational programming and services. And also I would say what came up around the technology piece with COVID-19 and homeschooling, we've realized, like some other communities, that when it comes to educational programming services, we have a lot of work to do so that our parents and students are up with technology, whether they have Chromebooks or ability to do work at home. That was something that came up. Empowering parents and families. I always knew that, you know, that for us, I know my family, as long as you knew my parents, if you ever wanted to keep Augy Jones in line, you just had to talk to my parents. So, you know, for us, we know that going forward, having a school system that feels comfortable talking to our parents and accessing them and having them connected to the school, not just for parent-teacher nights, not just for Black History Month, but every day, so that the parents in the school and the teachers all have a positive relationship. And also we want to empower parents around what are some of the things you should be doing at home to help your children do better at school. Because I know a lot of what I did at school was based on what I was being told at home around the excellence that my parents wanted me to shoot for. And lastly would be equitable access and involvement. And this is a Jamboard breakout that we are going to talk about after we talk about the framework. So equitable access and involvement. So we are in the system, same as our students are at a minority, so are our professionals. So from regional coordinators to student support workers, to vice principals, to people that work at the Department of Ed, people that work at the regions, there's often this tension around being the one Black person at the table, or how you're seen at the school, or how you're dealt with by your with your colleagues. So that equitable access and involvement would be our fifth pillar. So if you can move on to the next slide. So this is kind of a breakdown of those pillars. And so I'm not going to read right from the pillars. I will start to your very left with authentic self-identification. And as you can see, you know, we have students, as we know, in families who are from the continent directly. Some are from the Caribbean. Some are returning to Nova Scotia from Toronto. And then there's a large majority of students whose parents and grandparents are from historically situated Black communities in Nova Scotia. So we have a variety of people that we would call Black or of African ancestry, and we would like the system to know those differences. And then on top of that, we want our people to identify where they're from. So if your dad's from Jamaica and your mom's from Grenada, you should be able to say that and tell the school that's what your culture is. So we also have flipped this, where on the registration forms now we have a space for Black students to identify even deeply of who they are. Are they from the continent? Are they from Cherry Brook? Are they from Hammonds Plains? Are they from Scarborough? So that's what we feel is a huge pillar for us around authentic self-identification. Number two pillar, which these are all connected, is knowing them as they're known. And again, authentic strength-based. So we love our kids. We send them to school with love. We would like the school to love them the same way we do. So that basically sums up that pillar. The third pillar, which is educational programming and services, meaningful academic and wellness programming for our kids. So we want it to be meaningful. We want it to be just. We want the students that need support to get it. We want the students that if you have a engagement issue or behavioral issue with a student, a lot of times they should not be on an IPP. And so we want some accountability around the programming that our students tend to be targeted for, but also there's some programming that they need that they're invisible to. So we want to balance that out with the educational programming and services. And that also brings into curriculum. I know that we have Doreen Millhet, who does a lot of work from P to 6 or P to 7 on embedding African Nova Scotian history into science classes, phys ed classes. We don't want it to just be the courses that are about Blackness, African Canadian services, African Canadian Studies 11 or AHL 12. We want it to be embedded in the curriculum that all kids, white kids, Mi'kmaq kids, Syrian kids, Black kids, all get to learn about our culture. So that's also, curriculum is also a part of that educational programming and services. The fourth one, which would be below that, is equitable access and involvement. Increase the access and resources for the staff, for the African Nova Scotian students, parents, and staff, consistent with the way that some of our peers are accessing the system. And then the last pillar would be empowering parents and guardians. And in this, we're talking about elders in the community. We want to engage elders in the community more than just during Remembrance Day or Black History Month. We want the elders in the community to link with our children more consistently. We would like community members and parents to feel less intimidated by school. And so we know there's a role there through the branch of reaching out to the parents in the community and making sure that they know we're there for them, we're there to help them navigate a school system that sometimes can be very tense, can be a school system that parents are not happy with. And can be a school system that is straight up unfair. And so that's our 5 pillars right there. If we can move on to the next slide. So what are our priorities? And so coming out of these pillars, what are some of the things that we are looking at as benchmarks to say, are we hitting the bag? Are we making an impact? So the first one is an increase in African Nova Scotian staff and meaningful services and supports. And I do know as a branch, we do a lot of work to try to get more regional coordinators out there, more student support workers, more Black teachers, more Black students on the SAC committees, Black parents on the SAC committees. So this thing around us as a branch, when we see an increase of Black faces in the school system, then we know that we're starting to make impact with these pillars. The second bullet would be an increased presence within the public school program framework document. And so around curriculum and the way that the provincial government, when it comes to education, are we embedded in their overall framework of public school programming? And so we can monitor that. And we know it's our job to be there and to link our community and make sure the resources are there, but we want to see ourselves in the PSP. The third bullet is formal monitoring and evaluation of the success and adaptations of IPPs for African Nova Scotian learners. That is ongoing. We know that that's a problem, but we've definitely addressed the system and said we're not happy with the way that IPPs are going. Parents are not happy. Students are not happy. So there's some things being put in place so that there's more accountability for that. And that's, again, a bullet that we are going to monitor to see how we're doing. If we get more equity as far as who's on IPPs and who's not, then we know again that we are making an impact. Increase in timely reporting and appropriate responses to racial incidents in school. I must say that I've been sadly affected by the amount of reports of racial incidences across the province since I've been at the branch. I've taught in schools, as people know, for many, many years, 20 years plus. But to be at the branch and see how many times from Yarmouth to Sydney, there are racial incidents that involve teachers or other students or support staff towards students, towards our Black support staff, is a little bit disheartening. So we've focused on that. And one of the reasons why Ken Fells, who's been a great addition to our team, is on the team, is to work on our anti-racism, anti-discrimination module, which is going to be a module that administrators have to go through. It will take place in January, and it's really trying to let administrators know that along with bullying and cyberbullying, we want racism in the schools to be just as much of a priority that principals deal with in a quick manner, a fair manner, and also in an equitable manner where when we talk about the victim, which would be our students feeling that way, then there's a thing around making sure that the students that are affected, which are our Black students, have a chance to express themselves and explain. So restorative justice is also a part of us keeping track of these racial incidences in the schools. If you go to the right side, increased performance at levels 3 and 4 on the provincial assessments. This is desegregated data that we want to monitor. So if we are making an impact, our students should be doing better. So we are going to be looking at these literacy and numeracy results, and we want to make sure that our students are improving. And if they're not improving, we have to continue to go back to the system and do what we need to do to get that improvement. The bullet underneath of that, increased number of African Nova Scotian learners in our higher levels of education. So IB courses and advanced placement courses, because the students who are in IB courses or advanced placement courses are often students who are going to make it to post-secondary, get scholarship money. What a great foundation they have. And so we would like to see more of our students, less of our students on IPP and more of our students in IB courses and advanced placement courses. And if we see that happening, again, we know we're going in the right direction. And lastly, we want increased graduation rates and post-secondary confirmations. I think that NSCC is just as comparable to go to as Acadia or Dow. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a university. It could be NASCAD, but we do want more of our Black students, students of African ancestry, graduating and then getting confirmations that they are accepted into a post-secondary institution. So that's just a quick rundown of our framework. And we'd like you to now, we're going to go to one page. So if you can click on the Jamboard again, we're going to go to page 8. And when you go to that page, it says, are we hitting the right areas? So if everyone could take a look and jump over to, and you know that there's some arrows above where it can say next frame. So you want to go to page 8 and we'll all work with page 8. So from what you see from the framework, and there's a graphic of the framework there, of those 5 pillars, do you feel that we are hitting the right areas with these 5 pillars? Which of these 5 pillars resonates with you that you say, hey, that I like that. That's really going to have an impact on the system. What else do you think may be necessary? So could we take, we've been working with 7 minutes. It is now 2:45. So could we take 7 minutes to populate page 8 of the Jamboard? And then we will come back and get the folks that put their comments there, we'll get you to explain them a bit. And as I said, we have one other Jamboard to go to after this. So this first Jamboard is reacting to the framework. Okay, we can do a little bit of a check-in around page 8. But if you could just put in I'm not sure, if people can hear me, then we may not need to go back to the main room, because from this Jamboard, we're going to go to page 11 after this. So if everyone can hear, then we might as well stay on this page and we will debrief the sticky notes that you have here. The ones that I saw come up first, which I thought was fantastic, was this piece around wellness, and not only wellness for the students, because someone asked, is data being collected regarding Black learners' social emotional needs? And then there's data also, or spaces for our professionals who are Black educators, Black administrators, Black support staff, and their wellness. And I do know that we realize that that is a part of our framework that we are looking to expand, because the wellness, if you're on 5 bars or 4 bars like your cell phone, then you're going to go to work and be able to affect the students in a more positive way than if you're on 1 bar. And there's a lot of things that can go on in the workplace that leave us on 1 bar. So we are looking to do some more work and check and continue to get data on wellness. Above that, knowing them as they are known is an interesting area to explore and guide building relationships. And what's interesting about that is, from the time that we've been doing the framework and this team has presented to many, many folks, the one particular pillar that seems to resonate with people who are not of African ancestry is this knowing them as they're known. And I think when we frame it like that, they can think about their own children and think about their own nieces and nephews and realize that they also want their children to be known the same way they are at home. And so when we say to them that when our children go to school, and I know that Gail brought up a point about Black boys, and it makes sense because boys are often seen as cute. Our Black boys are cute when they're 5, 7 years old. And then those same boys who are 15, as they grow into their bodies, they become a threat because of stereotypes around Black men. And so this thing around knowing them as they're known, love them the same way, all the way through their growth, from being a child at 5 to a boy at 15, 16. So knowing them as they're known is very effective for us. Empowering parents and families is an important area to strengthen. A couple of people have said that they like the pillars and that they are very effective. We are going to, and this question came up, Marlene did answer this question in our last session. This is, right now we've spent a year putting the framework together, getting input from a lot of people. But I do think we're at the point now, especially after the SLA, where in September we plan to launch our framework at an official level. It will be out there to the systems. It will be out there to parents and community so that people know that these 5 pillars are what we're working from. It took us a long time to put it together, but we're really proud of what we have. And so, and again, we're still open to suggestions, but yet we think that these pillars and the way that we're going to monitor these pillars is going to be positive for us. Have parent navigators from the Black communities. That's a great suggestion. We are moving in that area, something around parent coaches, and getting parents more officially connected to the school system. So that's a great suggestion that we are working on. We need to continue to highlight what we deem as success and what that looks like. Monitoring and accountability piece to ensure all schools are doing it. So as we go forward, we are still going to be looking for your input, and also we would appreciate when you leave SLA that, you know, if you've had a positive feeling about these pillars, you know, feel free to pass that on to your colleagues, to parents, to students, that, you know, that the African Canadian Services Branch is moving in a direction where we want to see our students do better. We want our parents to feel better in schools. We want administrators, white administrators and teachers and professionals to see the importance of viewing our children as full of potential and positivity and strength-based. And so all of this are built into those pillars. So I don't want to take up too much more time because we do want to go to page 11. So if we could switch over to page 11. And this part, I would say to the group that this is really about you. And we are aware that we try as a team to really stick behind each other and support each other. We do have to the extent that we have a cell phone chat thread that's been on the go since COVID-19 sent us working home. And we all say good morning to each other every single morning of every day of the week. And one of the reasons we do that is that we want to support each other's wellness as a group, as a team, as an African Canadian Services Branch. So the question that I'm going to leave you 7 minutes again to think about is, when you think about your workplace and you walking into your workplace, I know we've been working from home, but envision your building for now. What does equitable access and involvement mean to you in your role? So day to day, what things could we help with or advocate on behalf of, whether it's at the region, whether it's at the department, whether it's in a school? In what ways do you feel like your voice or your accessibility to certain tables, to certain things are not there? So the question that I'm going to leave you with for 7 minutes, what does equitable access and involvement mean to you in your role?
After they answer that, I wonder if they could also look at the other stickies as well and see if they have any thoughts that you might want to add in responses to the questions that are asked. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for that, Marlene. Yes. So similar to the other breakout rooms, what access points and supports are necessary for you to do your job? What are the inequities that you experience in your job? How have you tried to address these instances? And what else is necessary for us to know? Okay, we're about little over 7 minutes, and I see that a lot of comments have been made, and I think this is very, very personal. And I know when we first put together this town hall, one of the first things that I know Marlene was saying was this was to celebrate you people that are on the line today, like the Black educators and administrators. You know, the work that you're putting in day to day, and some of the microaggressions and macroaggressions that you have to deal with are meant to be complimented, that you get through that and you're still there for parents, still there for community, still there for students. And so I can see that in the sticky notes, that this resonates with the group around the questions around what access points and supports do you need? And what's necessary for you and what would make your day at work more manageable. And so a lot of those sticky notes speak to that. I'm going to go over a few of them, and also I'd like to open up. I know people can hear me, but we hopefully people can still talk as well, because I'd like to get some people to really speak to some of these, because these are so personal that I don't know if me just reading them out is going to do them justice. But I will start on the left: not being invited to engage in certain opportunities, not being included in conversations, lack of training. I've tried to resolve situations with my supervisor. Some have been successful, some have not. And that links to one I know that was about hierarchies I saw. Understanding hierarchies and how important they can be if you step out of line. As a principal, equitable access to information, opportunities, and resources. Exhausting emotionally, psychological, and physically to address issues and situations around racism every day. Not sure where to go, vent, decompress, where I feel safe while maintaining. And I lost the second part of that. To have a safe place to share what I'm experiencing without fearing being labeled a troublemaker or overreacting. So I don't feel right reading these out without giving a space. So can we, and Marlene, can we allow, I don't know if when we're on the jam boards, if people can speak. So to the equitable access, could we go back to the room and just allow people to express their feelings about this? Would that work?
Yeah, I think I can, absolutely. I think it works. I guess it depends if people feel safe, because the presentation is being recorded as well.
Okay, you're right. Yes.
Do that.
Yes,
you
good
know,
point.
I think we definitely want to honor it. And I think one of the things that we hope comes out of this is the interest in having a space, having a network where people, educational staff members can come together to share and talk, and so that we can prioritize, we can advocate, that we have this space for them to be able to communicate their experiences, and not just communicate their experiences, but for us to also take them up as action points as well.
So I guess that's it from my part of it. And again, Marlene, I appreciate, you know, the action item coming out of this to the group is that we are definitely moving forward in a direction around wellness of the professionals in the system. And what can we do as a branch to have a Friday, might even be a Friday after work, or a celebration, just a chance for people to get together and network and express their feelings in a safe space with people who you don't have to explain racism to. They already understand it, they know it. So then you can get right to supporting rather than explaining. So thank you all very much. And we're going back to Ken and Marlene back in the main room.
Thank you, and I'll stop sharing. You know, to add on to that, what I do want to say is we know the literature is clear that being an anti-racist educator, dealing with racism, just being Black within an educational system, racism has its toll on us physically, socially, emotionally, all of those items. And to be able to acknowledge that oftentimes just gives that sort of assurance that what you are experiencing, what you are feeling, what we are feeling, what we are experiencing is real. And so we are a part of the support system for the students as well as yourselves. And I think that's what the next couple of slides we hope sort of speak to for you. We thought about you as we were developing the document that came out around valuing Black students' lives. And we were not just concerned about Black students' lives, but we were also concerned about the adults who are working and advocating on behalf of the students in the buildings or in the communities in which they serve. three bullets I'll just talk about really quickly is, you know, what you pointed to, not knowing about meetings, not knowing about tables. I saw one sticky note where people said, you don't mind asking for a seat if you know the table exists. And so some of the things that we're called to engage in are very subtle and hard to put our finger on. And I'll just go up a slide. In that document that's now available on our website, department's website, around dealing with racism and what is it that everybody needs to do. There is that recognition and a call to recognize that it is really existing, not just for the children, but for ourselves. The other element, the other element that I thought it was very necessary to state is around reframing solutions. When Black staff and Black educators come and give you a way to resolve a situation and the problem, to be able to receive it with the same level of expertise as you do with non-Black staff. And, you know, in that document itself, it points to the fact that when we bring suggestions and ideas and recommendations to you, they're not only grounded in what we know works, which is the research, as well as they're also tied to the communal knowledge. So what we've heard from parents or families and communities around what's necessary. And that is, you know, I think an action point that all of the sort of the regions can begin to take up. That's very simple. Acknowledge and see us as professionals. The third bullet is around consulting with us around the inequities, especially as it relates to decision making and access to resources and supports. To ask the staff, what are the things, similar to the way in which we're asking the questions, how are these inequities experienced for you? What sort of levels of decision making are you not involved in? How are the resources, and I saw the sticky note around professional development and not having access to training. So all of those are critical. I'll also mention that, you know, when we talked about well-being, and you certainly brought that up through the Jamboard, about it being essential to achievement, and that it's essential that Black students have access to Black counselors and counselors who operate from an anti-racist perspective. And the last bullet that I wanted to mention around the inclusion, the involvement, the access that community members or student support workers will have now going forward, so that they can better support the students and inspire the students. There's a short video that I think we still have time that we'd like just to show to you, and it's by Kafeli, where he's asking about our leadership identity. So if
do you want to put that in the chat box and I put it up for you?
Yes, that's wonderful. Thank you. I'm just wondering why the video's loading. Have anybody seen that document in the system? The call to value Black students' lives? It just came out towards the end of June. No. Okay, we're going to put the link into the chat room. It'll be coming out again in the fall, along with, as a branch, we'll be working on developing resources and webinars to support that document.
Yeah, you can keep talking. If you stop presenting, then I can put it up.
Thank you. I just pulled it off the screen. I forgot about that. And I'm just going to put that link into the really helpful that we had a number of educational leaders help and support in developing the document and reviewing it. So I'll turn it back to Ken. Thanks, Ken.
Intentionality. The intentionality of your leadership identity. I asked the question, like you think about it. Matter of fact, before I ask the question, let me set it up. I'm pacing this stage right now, and I'm in this blue suit with this blue shirt and this blue tie. And before I got here, when I was in the hotel room, I was a different guy. I wasn't this guy you see on the stage, if that makes sense to you. I was watching First Take. Any sports fans in the room? I was watching First Take. I'd gotten in late last night, so I wasn't about to come down here and see a session and fall asleep. So I slept late. I watched First Take, and I was sports fan while I was watching ESPN. But at some point, it was time to get ready to be here. I morphed into this guy on the stage. I transformed into this guy on the stage. I am in full presenter mode right now. But when I was at the hotel, I was not. When I'm at home with my 17-year-old daughter and my wife, I'm definitely not. And if I was, the daughter would laugh me out the front door if I brought this behavior home and spoke like this. So I morphed into this identity, presenter identity, leadership identity. This is what my presence represents. I'm asking you, when you walk into that building, who are you? Yeah, I know your name. Yeah, I know your title, but that's not what I'm asking. Those young people see you. They see what? They see who? See, many of you and myself, we have children who go home to very abject situations. Many of you in this room, as did I, have children who go home to situations that if your teachers were to switch places with them for one day, many of your staff members wouldn't last for 1 minute in their shoe, 10 minutes max, because their lives are that complicated, that difficult, that challenging. Well, if that's who's walking into the building, I'm not expecting you necessarily to be fired up, because you're dealing with some stuff. Got some young ladies in your schools who are dealing with some stuff that they may not even bother to tell you, but it's a part of their reality. Well, when I talk about identity, I said to myself, yeah, I'm the principal, yeah, I'm the instructional leader, yeah, I'm a professional developer, yeah, I do deal with budget, yeah, finance, and all the other things that come along with leadership, but I said there's only one thing I want these kids to know me for. All that other stuff, it really doesn't matter. In terms of my identity, I just want them to see Principal Kafele and see a motivator. That's it. I want kids to look at me and say, man, that guy gets me excited. Man, that guy makes me think that I could fly up to that top balcony by spreading my wings. That guy makes me think that the possibilities are real. I just wanted to be that guy, y'all. Because I knew if those young people saw me as a motivator, I knew that if those young people saw their leader as one who was a source of inspiration, a source of encouragement, I knew that there was a higher probability that they, in fact, were going to soar. But that's Principal Kafele. I'm asking you rhetorically, what's your identity when you walk into that building? Your presence in that building means what to those young people? Means what to staff? Your presence, when they think of you, they think what? When they see you, they see what? Who are you when you're in that building? Your leadership. Who drove in thinking, here we go, another PD friends last night, about a good 30. And I was reading on their pages how so many of them were saying that disciplinary. I want you to see me as the lead educator, the instructional leader. That's how I want to be perceived. So your point is extremely valid. And see, so the breakdown, here's a breakdown. We're not
I think Ken may have dropped out of the room again, but we got a chance to see the video we wanted to share with you around a school identity, the identities that you wear as Black educational leaders in the buildings in which you're serving continues to be so valuable. And picking up on that, we want to make sure that you are nourished. And there is a way for us to understand what your professional learning needs are. So Augy's going to just lead us into very quickly the next Jamboard, and I can pull it up on the screen. Augy.
Yes. And also, this is really important to us around creating that network that we talked about in the last Jamboard. So if we might go a couple minutes over, and if you could bear with us, it's very important that we kind of get this information from you so we know what to do going forward in order to link the professional kind of the professional needs of Black educators and Black administrators. So in the Jamboard, we're going to go to page 14. So again, you can click on the same Jamboard that we've been using and go to 14 of 17. And it says, what are your professional learning interests? And so the prompting questions are, how often would you like to meet? So if we did have this idea of Black professionals who are in education meeting, what would that look like as far as how often would we like to meet? What are some topics that we think we should be discussing when we get together? Similar to when we talk about microaggressions or not being invited to certain tables. So any suggestions you have around what are the topics and what else may be necessary for us as professionals? How can we support you in your role? Are you interested in establishing a provincial network? And if so, why is that important? So these are some very important takeaways for us because, as I said, the branch is impact oriented. We want things to happen. We want change to happen. So as we leave this fantastic session this afternoon, we really want to have some going forward initiatives. And this is one of them. What can we do for you professionally? And also think about some PD. I know that a lot of BEA, people that are connected to BEA have been going to NAPSI for years, over 20 years, some of them, Ken included. But what would be some other professional learnings that you might want to be interested in too, that we might be able to facilitate? So if you can take, well, let's say 5 minutes, it's now 25 after 3. So if you can take about 5 minutes and then we will look at what you put on the sticky notes again, go over them quickly. And I know that Marlene is going to wrap it up after that. Okay, it's 3:30 right now. And again, we did get some, I can see by the sticky notes that we did get some positive feedback. It seems to me is that it's kind of a rhetorical question to ask if we need to get together. I think that we do. I think that many of the people here, and this has been expressed in other sessions as well, is that there's this collective, I think Afrocentricity is also about us supporting each other. And I was going to say that from the beginning of this session. When I look around at who's on this call, I'm connected. It's like a family. Like I'm connected to most of the people on this call through 1 or 2 degrees of separation, whether we work together, taught together, grew up together, including the people on our team. So I think that there's a thing around collective security and us supporting each other. So all the sticky notes that are coming up, we're talking monthly, not September, not the beginning of the year, or Christmas time, which is tough, or end of the year, but somewhere in between. Well-being seems to be a topic that I think that we could really focus on, is the well-being of the professionals that are working on behalf of our students. We're so busy going at it and trying to make change that we often don't take care of ourselves. So as a professional learning interest, talking about well-being versus numeracy, literacy, lesson planning, CRP, I think that, talking about well-being is a great point that we will take into account. What opportunities are happening in each region or board, and that's a good way that we can communicate provincially. And one of the good things that came out of COVID was obviously we can meet, and it doesn't have to be physical, because we've been doing that for the last 4 or 5 months. So there could be a way that we meet in the same type of cyber venue that allows all the way from Yarmouth to Whitney Pier and everything in between. We can get all these professionals together. It doesn't have to be physical at the moment. It could be in cyberspace. I'm not sure, but I appreciate knowing that you are there to help. And as a branch, we definitely are. Yes, would like to know what is going on province-wise. Yes, it's helpful to know what is happening across the province. This isn't an ACSB issue, but a provincial issue. We need better communication overall. Agreed. Already doing a great job from my position. You're already supporting more than you know. Thank you for being a voice for all issues, big or small, that folks don't see. Thanks for fighting the battles before they hit the regional centers or the boards. And again, that's led by Marlene and Ken and the people that are on our team. I'm really proud to be on that team. I'm a small piece of that team, but there is a real sense that we want people, the province, to know that our branch is there to make a difference and support Black students, Black parents, Black community, and obviously Black professionals. We need to add a professional development component. We need to convince our peers that this is good for our well-being as well. We are not alone. Town hall sessions for parents and guardians of Black learners as well, regarding IPPs, adaptations, the role of SAC, accountability for schools, regions. And so I think these are great. We do have a way that all the sticky notes that we've gotten over the last 2 days, we do have a way to record them, keep them as data, use them as ways to become action items and initiatives. So I want to thank you all for your participation, for your insightfulness and your ability to leave us with data, leave us with thoughts that we could go forward with. So I'm going to turn it over to our executive director, Marlene, to close it up.
Okay. Oh, I'm already in there. Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to go over to the last slide. Actually, I'm just going to go forward a little bit. We wanted to, as you heard at the beginning, we wanted to really just honor you and give you an opportunity to hear what we are doing on your behalf, because we know you are the closest to the children and you are the closest to the families. We are sort of one step back in this particular role. And part of that was also about recognizing and giving you an opportunity to celebrate yourselves, to identify, the things that are in you that you rely on a day-to-day basis to continue to push things forward. So this last Jamboard is really about you, and I can see some people have already started. The first thing is name 3 qualities or strengths that empower you as a Black educational leader. And if you haven't done this already, I want you to sort of take a moment just to put that down, because you possess the things that our children need. And then the other one down in the far corner here is just being able to identify and name who are the people in your corner that keep you up, because we all have those people in our corner that hold us up, that encourage us to go back in and to continue to do this work. And so if we can just take 1 minute, if you haven't added anything, your strengths, please add those. I want to read what you have written. 3 strengths, and I'm just going to read them. Having a group of Black colleagues to support one another, seeing my Blackness as a privilege. Community leaders empower me. There's no I in team, and my door, my ears are open. I never say never. I am committed to being an educational leader because change through movement. Resilience, determination, strong belief in children. Determination, it will get done regardless of the hurdles on the way. The people in my corner, community leaders, not just physical communities, family. While we try to teach our children about life, our children teach us what life is about. Just being you, don't need more than that. For the smiles that you put on the children's faces, for the inspiration, for generating that interest, that love of learning and education, that inquiry. We thank you for all that you do, and we want you to know as a branch, we are there with you, beside you, and we so look forward to over the next couple of months having these conversations, because I believe that iron sharpens iron and we strengthen each other. And there's so much more we can do. Like that quote we saw on the very first page that speaks to the power of the collective voice. So thank you everyone for taking your time out of your summer, out of your day, out of your responsibilities to help build what we know we need to have to support our children. We thank you so very much. And I'm so looking forward to September and beyond.
I just added one more there, Miss Marlene.
Okay.
And it was, we need to have the opportunity to do exchanges with each other.
Okay. Thanks, Ken. Yes. Let's figure out how to do the things that you have put forward as ideas. We take them and we will take them up and try to figure out how to make these things happen. That will be the direction, and we've heard you loud and clear. You're most welcome. Thank you, Ms. Williams-Hart. We appreciate all that you continue to do. Karen, thank you. Blessings to you, Natasha. Thank you so very much. Everyone who's joined us this afternoon, for the people who are behind the scenes supporting us, our colleagues here at EIPS, thank you for everything that you did to make this ACSB strand possible, for your assistance with all of the Jamboard, the late night calls, how you work behind the scenes, to the moderator, Bridget, and also to Calvin taking notes on us and giving us constant feedback around what's important. And to all of the ACSB staff who were involved in this work, we thank you. Thank you, Tracy, for joining us, and we appreciate your comments around it being much needed. Melina, thank you as well. We look forward to the next projects that we're going to do together. Thank you, everyone.